do is when you leave this earth, is that's how people are going to judge you. And that's the legacy piece of it. And it really matters. It matters what you do on.
Alrighty. So this is the one. This is the first one. This is the inaugural episode of Ballers Brew podcast. So
Right. All right.
with that being said, I'm going to jump straight in. Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Ballers Brew. That is correct. You heard me. Ballers Brew, the world's hottest, most insightful and relevant sport podcast that brings you diverse perspectives on various trending topics within the global sporting industry through thought-provoking discussions. Now, you may be wondering, Ballers Brew? I know, right? It's quite the tongue twister. But trust me when I tell you, this is a community that you wish to be a part of. My name is Michael Bromfield, and I am the host and creator of Ballers Brew. For those that are tuning in, I am super stoked to have you listening. Today is a special episode, and I can't wait to unpack this discussion. I kept asking myself the question, what is the best way to begin a series and introduce myself in an authentic manner? And then it hit me. What better person to have joined me than none other than Curtis Gladney? Curtis is the managing partner of Playbook Athlete, and one of Playbook's values is identifying an individual's why. Every individual has a purpose, and today I'd like to share a part of my why and my story and how that interlinks into Ballers Brew. So, from wherever you're listening, please may you give Curtis a big, warm welcome. There we go.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that was a bit of a long one, but I think it got the point across. Got us a good introduction.
I don't think you can do any better with that. I love it.
Thank you very much. So the first thing I'd like to jump to, obviously, we started discussing back in lockdown of 2020. We got to know each other through LinkedIn, and you reached out. I don't know if I reached out to you or you reached out to me, but it was about the playbook movement, and I immediately fell in love with the story and the purpose behind the brand and what you as an individual stood for. So I think the first question I'd love to ask you is, can you elaborate further on what is Playbook Athlete, and what has been your role within the Why I Grind success story?
Good. So first of all, Michael, congratulations on Ballers Brew. Great name. It's going to be an even better podcast. Uh, Love to see your success, and we're championing your success over here in the States. So we're proud of you for that. And also, thanks for having me on this. It's a lot of pressure to be the inaugural guest on Ballers Brew, and I hope that I'm able to live up to that hype. So yeah, Playbook Athlete. Who are we? We're over here in the States, and we started off with exposure for athletes, and that was a good niche, and it was very profitable for us. And then we realized there's more to just exposure for athletes, and we came up with the term why. Why do you do what you do? Why do you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go to work? Why do you get up at 5 and work out? And there's a whole why I grind movement behind that, because once you figure out your why, well, then nothing can stop you, because that why is the motivator, that why is the fuel. So like you said a second ago, I'm one of the managing partners. There's another half of me down in Atlanta in Georgia that does the kind of the field work. He's out there with the athletes and the professionals and things like that, pushing the movement. So my role is mainly keeping the social media going, keeping the that's how we met on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Keeping the administrative piece of it, and playing behind the scenes, which I'll tell you, if Joe's listening, that's harder than what you do down there. But nonetheless, it goes into that salad bowl to make that salad, all the different pieces. So yeah, we're excited about what we do, and it's not work when you're passionate about what you do. So I don't call this a job. I call this, a way of life, because it's inspiring and empowering when you see somebody else inspired and empowered, and that's kind of what we live each day to do. So we're excited and we're happy that that you're part of the Playbook brand.
That is really, really cool. And it's interesting what you've said, like with trying to empower and provide that stage for athletes to find their why, to help motivate them to move forward, because that literally interlinks into some of the questions I have further on. But the next thing I do want to ask you, and maybe just if you could elaborate further on it, is that obviously within any company that is established, there are core values that form a part of one's identity. And you've mentioned that Playbook Athlete really focuses on the slogan, Why I Grind. And Why I Grind forms a part of my why. And as my shirt says, as the hoodie I'm wearing, if you can cop that at playbook.store, it says purpose. And that is my why. I work for a purpose, a greater purpose. And I would like to know if you can elaborate on maybe some of the fundamental values that make Playbook Athlete unique within the sporting industry, besides the coin of why.
So what you just said right there is very powerful. What makes us unique is we don't see athletes as just an athlete, because there's a lot of people, a lot of athletes play high school sports, right? So there's a smaller percentage that go on to play college, and an even smaller percentage that go on to play professional. So we realize that an athlete, if he's just an athlete or she's just an athlete, you're a one trick pony, because as soon as that injury, God forbid, happens, or who knows, you don't make it to that next level, it's like, what do you do next? So Playbook is seriously committed to and focused on developing athletes, not just on the field, on the court, or in your case in the pool. We want to develop those athletes outside, because right now you're playing football Friday night in high school, you're going to play college on Saturday, but for most of the athletes, Monday morning is coming, and we want to help those guys be able to be successful in the corporate world. So we're teaching athletes how to start a business, how to focus, and how to really thrive in society outside of sports. So that is one thing that sets us apart from anybody that would be a competitor. Most people want to rank an athlete. Most people want to promote an athlete. But then when that athlete, is gone, or the heyday is over, they don't even concern themselves with that athlete anymore. That's also different from us, and we're focused. We call it playbookathlete.life is one of our sites, because you really come there and it's about life. You're with us for life, and the ride is never over, and it's very easy to get a ticket on this ride, and we're there with you, promoting you through your journey with life, and we want to see it, and we want to help learn about it.
I think that it's so exciting to hear that, it's not just an average brand. I'll say average because a lot of brands, their message or focus is purely on, the what can we gain. A lot of it doesn't normally go towards how are we benefiting the greater community. Although there are some that do that, trying to empower the athlete, but there are a lot that are left behind. And it's something that, I'm busy studying within my one specialization class, which focuses on coaching. And a point that we keep driving home, or our professor keeps driving home, is that, it's so easy to miss the main thing. And the main thing is the person, it's the individual. A lot of times people come in and they're focused on the external factors. And in a coaching environment, you might be looking at skills, game day, the things that are required in order to prep oneself coming into the sport. And, people tend to forget that we're human beings. We can't be overworked. And it's like you said, forbid the day that there is that ACL injury. Forbid the day that there is a tear on someone's ankle. And today I was actually listening to NFL Live on ESPN, and it kind of frustrated me a little bit to hear one of the guys say that, an ACL tear is now becoming as if it's just a sprained ankle in the NBA. And I was like, but it's not. When you study something like that, you start to understand the intricacies behind how detrimental that can have, or the detrimental effect that can have on an athlete, and the long-term effects it will have on their capability to play if they are fortunate enough to get back on the field. So I find that is really, really cool, and I love that.
It's very interesting, because I tell athletes all the time, self-care is the best care. And most people you're going to come in contact with talking to the athlete, they don't care about you. They care about what you can do. And that's their allegiance to you. So when you can't do that thing that they were allegiance to you to do, then they're done with you. So yeah, it's disheartening to hear that, because injuries back in my day was a big deal, right? If there was an injury, you maybe not the rehab piece of it, but it was a big deal when somebody was injured. Now it's just it's water cooler talk. It happens so frequent that it's not the wow factor behind it anymore. However, it's very important that you take care of the mind, and you take care of the heart, and that's what we focus on with Playbook Athlete, because it all matters and it all equals the greater good for the self and the community and ultimately the culture. So.
Yeah. And I think that's really, really cool. And, it perfectly lends into my next question I'd like to prompt is that as an individual and a person that's a leader within the business world, and you're involved with various spheres of influence, can you comment on your personal philosophies that have been critical and grounding and guiding you throughout your career? And that's also looking as a father figure, a leader figure, and having been an athlete within all those different spheres of influence.
Yeah, very, very good question. Most people will tell you I get into business to make money. Uh, and to me, I get it, but that's the wrong focus. Because when you're focused on money, you'll do anything to get it, and you'll lessen yourself. You'll beg, borrow, and steal. You'll degrade people, devalue people, dehumanize people to get it because you're focused on getting that bag. So that's not what we're about at Playbook Athlete. So me as a father, I have 3 girls, and I know they're watching me. The youngest girl may not understand everything that I got going on or how I go about it, but I have a girl that's in college at Chapel Hill. She understands everything. So I would like for her, even if I don't know it, she goes back and watch these podcasts or my interaction. I want her to be inspired. If nothing else, I want her to say, I'm proud of my dad. So that's what motivates me to do what I do, and also to do it how we do it. It's not about the dollars, because when you do that, when you focus on the right things, the money will come, the brand growth and awareness, it'll come. But also when it does come, it's genuine. It's one that is palatable to people. People want to gravitate to it because they're like, oh my goodness, this brand right here is not only building me up, but I can get behind the reason that there is a brand in the first place. So we're not focused on dollars. We're not in the game to cheat people out of money. We're not in pump and dump things like that. And again, we've been in the game since 2011, and growth was slow initially, but again, it's starting to gravitate, and we're starting to grow because of the way we do business and the way that we want to leave an impact and a legacy. And like your shirt says, purpose driven, and we're focused on that, and the community is growing because of that.
And I think that's really cool. And it's also sad to say that a lot of individuals or society as a whole can often become blinded by societal norms. It's like now you're saying people are chasing the dollar. People want that cash. People are I think worried about self-image preservation, and they're willing to do anything to get that pride at the cost or expenditure of tarnishing someone else's name. And that's not to speak for everyone. I don't want to be stereotypical, but it is prevalent, and it's an issue that you often see. And I've noticed within my own journey, especially through like the lockdown period, when you find something that you're truly passionate about, you really are more inspired and motivated to want to make that thing work at no matter what the cost is.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
And when it works and when it clicks, it's like, wow. And over the past few weeks, I'm currently involved with a few teams down here in down South Africa, and it's been so refreshing to see things that you work on come into fruition. Those things that you're putting those hours and hours into, and it works out. And it's like earlier you said, here's this brand. I'm in South Africa and I'm wearing your stuff. I'm wearing your clothing, and I want to share that brand. I want to share that message, and it's so uplifting. I think enriching for others to be able to see that it is possible. You are able to do that.
Absolutely. And I piggyback on that by saying it's even better. Nobody can sell your brand better than somebody else. And you inspire others, and it continues to daisy chain like that. So we appreciate that, Michael. Thanks so much for that.
Yeah, no, that's really, really cool. That also leads me into, you're speaking about your family, and how that interlinks into your philosophy and how you obviously want to portray yourself within both the company, to your family, to your friends, and in your leadership role. And I'd like to tie that back to your motto and bring it back to, what is your why? What is the thing that gets you moving? And I've asked you this before when we weren't rolling in our previous meeting, but I thought I'd love to have that story shared, because it's very easy to share that promotion with the people. But if, the why started with you and the other guys behind the company, that is the core why. You brought this to the surface and inspired many people to want to work forward. So I'd love to ask you that question. What is your why, and what keeps you motivated and driving?
Family. That is 100. That's why I started this, and that's why I get out of bed every morning, put my feet on the floor, because of family. And a second ago, I was talking about my three girls, but I really define family not just as my three girls and my wife, but I define family as anyone in my circle, because that's just the way I am. Michael, your family, and it's all about growing that network of family and friends, really. And so, in family and legacy, because it's all about what you do is when you leave this earth, is that's how people are going to judge you. And that's the legacy piece of it. And it really matters. It matters what you do on this earth while you're here. So my why, as the one behind it, is family, because there's not another reason for me to do this, because I want to create generational wealth. And that's a leg up for my kids and their kids, and so on and so on. And so if I can do that, then my legacy is strong with the kids. So it's all about that, man. And I don't know if I can find a better why. There's a bunch of one words, but mine boiled down, when you pull the layers back, mine is family.
That's really, really cool. And I find that um, really enriching to know that also, like with myself, you really want to work for those people that are around you, I feel. Uh, for me, it's also my family. I'm not a father figure, but I'm a son, I am a brother. And, you're wanting to help, I don't want to say create a name, but as you say, you want to leave something behind. You want to know that you've done your best whilst you've had the time on earth to make it better for those around you. You want to enrich your community and help your community grow and develop something that is unique to your own name. And I find that really, really cool. And that also links back to, the Playbook logo of why I grind. You're working towards a greater purpose. And I keep
Absolutely.
emphasizing the word purpose because I love the word purpose, which is really, really cool.
That's awesome. That's
Something else I'd like to touch into, I just want to clarify quickly. I don't know, my internet dips every now and then, and I just want to know if it ever breaks up, please let me know. Otherwise, yeah, we're gonna have to fix that. But if it's good, it's good. Are we good?
It's good right now, so.
Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. But the thing I also want to probably link into is having our previous discussion, knowing in the company you worked in before coming into Playbook. That was a very risky move. And as I mentioned earlier, like I was sitting on this podcast and wanting to launch, and I could have pulled the trigger, but I wouldn't say too scared to, but I wasn't ready to. And I kept holding back, going, I'm a perfectionist. I want to make this work. What led you to pull the trigger? What led you to decide, okay, I am ready to make this jump? And it's two completely diverse industries that you were working into. So what, number one, led you to make that change? And number two, what led you to the sporting industry specifically?
Good. Yeah. So before I was immediately before I did Playbook, I was working in nuclear. And I loved it. I love working with my hands. I'm a hands-on guy. I love that. But I always knew that if you're not building your own legacy, you're building someone else's legacy. So as good as I was at the company I was before, and as great of a career I could have had there, I was building somebody else's legacy. I was building their portfolio. They're telling shareholders, hey, we did great this year. All the big wigs at the top got $1 million bonuses every year. And then they gave us a few chips. So I was given a great effort, but only getting a small bit of a reward. And also, Michael, my time was not my time. I'd go home at night, they call me. 2 o'clock in the morning, they call me. Vacation, they would call me. So you put all that into the blender and hit blend. That's why I started. Part of the reason I started Playbook Athlete back in 2011. But what led me to burn the ships was it all came to a head. It just kept getting more and more. And in an industry, when you're good at something, they give you more of it. So I finally said, you know what? If I'm gonna fail, I'm gonna fail on my own. If I'm gonna go down, if I'm gonna drown, I'm gonna be by myself in this own pool. So the time is now, and that's the scariest point right there. So the listeners, I'm gonna tell you right now, the scariest point is not talking about leaving or going to do something on your own. The scariest point is when you do it. And the second you walk out, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm really on this island by myself. What do I do? For me, I love that moment. I said, now it's time to grind. I got to go out and get it. I got to go out and make it. I got to go out and push this thing. Because don't get me wrong, there were people that at the company that was expecting me to call them back and say, hey, I need another gig. That's not going to happen. I got to run. I had to go and I did it. And again, I'll say it again, Michael, that was the scariest point is when I dropped that badge off at the last time and walked out. But there was also the best point because I had my destiny in my hand. I get to go out and create my own legacy with knowing my why. That was the fuel that I needed. And it's been about almost 2 years now that I've been totally severed from that company and I'm still swimming. So I'm not saying that you won't go underwater every now and then, but when you're underwater, that's up to you if you're going to drown. So I decided to kick my head up and keep going. So we're swimming. And I enjoy it and I got my time back. I get to spend a lot of time with the girls. And so that's what I want. I want my legacy. I want my time back. And it was very inspiring to do, much like you did with this podcast. So I'm glad you did that.
That's really, really cool. I love that story. And I love, as I said, it's like that pulling the trigger moment. There's that fear of the unknown as to, you're walking in blind faith. You're taking that step into what is tomorrow. When you're so used to a routine of, okay, today I wake up and this is what I'm going to do. Tomorrow, this is what's going to happen. And especially when you're working within a corporate environment where, every week there's I don't want to call it monotonous, but there's a set routine as there
Yes.
are things that need to be done. There's check boxes that you're making. And now you're choosing your own plan. You're making what you want to do.
That's right.
And and that made me think. I was just as you're speaking, I just imagine you walking out of this building with your suitcase and like throwing it in the air and screaming, "I'm free!" Because it's like now
Yes.
you can do what you want. But
Yes.
I have to ask,
Absolutely.
or I have to ask,
Absolutely. Yes.
what did that look like? So day one after walking out, you've left. You can do whatever you want to do. What does that look like? How does that feel? Because now I'm thinking you spoke about fear, but how does that feel? Is it this like freedom, or is it this like, oh no?
I'll tell you this. Can you imagine dropping a kid off in Disney World and saying go? That kid initially is gonna be like, what do I do first? It's just so much. I can go anywhere. You mean to tell me I can go anywhere and do whatever I want to? That's what that feeling was for me. And I'll give you a little bit of more insight. It was another guy that started a company and we left the same day, the exact same day. And so, yes, Michael, I'm not gonna lie to you. There was a point, at one point, it was like, wow, this is real. What do I do now? But it was so welcome for me that I answered it by saying, I get to figure out what I do now. No one's telling me. I get to figure out. And so initially I started a routine. I go to a coffee shop every morning and work from a coffee shop and then pick a new coffee shop. And then, it's free floating, it's for me over, I grew up in the States and since kindergarten, you're told what to do, right? They ring a bell in school and you go from to this class. They ring another bell, you go to lunch. And it's ingrained in you to follow the path that somebody else has set before you. But the moment you realize that, man, I can think for myself. I don't need those constraints. Let me fly. I've jumped out the nest and I took off, and I have not looked back. But it's. I will also give this disclaimer: don't do this if you don't have a plan. It's better to put a plan out there, right? I mean, so those of you listening and thinking about doing this, You can do it and you will do it. Just be methodical about it. Be process driven and figure out the best way to get there. Because you can be sitting on this podcast with Michael one day and talking about your why and why you did it. So go ahead and do it. Take over the world.
And I find that really cool, and it's important that you also mention, like, for those that are listening, we are often taught, as you said, to think within the square. Our
Right.
thoughts are confined, and we want to find our own path. It's like you said earlier, we want to establish ourselves and leave that legacy. And leaving a legacy is so important, but when you are being constricted to the rules of someone else and having to fulfill someone else's destiny, how do you do that? And as you said, it starts with a plan. You need to figure yourself out. And I love this word, it's introspection. You need to introspect and figure out, who am I? Who is Michael Bromfield? Who is Curtis? And you were able to do that. And once you had the plan, you're like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to, day by day develop into this new process, this new person. And I found that really, really cool. And I can just imagine, you said you started in 2011. So that's been, what, it's 11 years, right?
Yep.
Congratulations. That's really,
Thank
really
you.
cool. That's a
Thank you. That's awesome.
milestone.
Appreciate that.
Uh, and I think the first thing I want to say, though, 11 years is a long time. And can you identify a low point within your career at Playbook Athletes and potentially how you were able to overcome that low point?
Yeah, can I identify one? I can identify many of them. And the first thing, Michael, the first one that comes to mind was I thought I was going to start this company, the online platform, and day one I was going to start making, millions of dollars and quit my job then. That didn't happen. So the best lesson I learned over the last 11 years in July, the best lesson I learned was patience. And because everything is a process. Your wife gets pregnant, you don't have the baby day one. There's a 9 month growing process. You put some seeds in the ground, want to grow some, an apple tree. There's a process. There's a waiting process because everything's got to, seeds got to germinate and grow and all that good stuff. There's a process. The same is true for a business and starting to, because it's got to grow. You got to get some traction. You got to get some, there's legal stuff you got to do. So patience, and that was the best thing about it. And I'm very spiritual, and I did a lot of praying, and everything came to fruition. But again, it is not immediate. Everything is time, and that was the best lesson I had. So I guess I would say the low point was expecting the world, but only getting a small country at first, right? So, but I learned also how to champion through what it's called failures, because a failure is just a different way of doing it. When you fail or when you think you lost, well, you just learn a way not to do it next time. So I had to compile all that stuff and get another creation, and then, oh, this works, let's go. So learning from what would be called failures is the best thing that I've ever learned with Playbook Athlete.
Yeah, I found that really cool, and it's often you hear people say a loss is a lesson. It teaches
That's
you
right.
how to be better for the next time or for the next attempt at trying to make a success. And I have to ask, and it might come across slightly blunt, but initially you said you're going to launch this website and you're ambitious that you're going to make $1 million off the bat.
Right.
And earlier at the start of this, we said it's stereotypical that people often have that perspective. If you look back at yourself 10 years in the past, do you think during that moment of thinking there would be quick success, do you think you were maybe potentially slightly naive?
To a degree. To a degree. Because when 2011 Curtis started Playbook Athlete, I didn't have a market analysis. I didn't know how to market to demographics. I didn't know how do you go get athletes. I was naive to think that athletes, thousands of athletes across the world, are Googling things that are on my website, and they're going to find this website like that. Well, there's algorithms in Google and the search engines. Didn't even know that. Didn't even know that I should be thinking about that. So yes, I will be honest and say yes. I was ambitious. I had a dream. I had a way of making the dream come to reality. But that's like having a car with no engine, right? That car looks good sitting in the driveway, but it does you no good sitting in the driveway. It's got to go down the road. Well, I didn't know I had to have an engine in it. So it was a learning curve. And listen, I wasted a lot of money. Education is not free. I spent a lot of money that I wouldn't have to spend if I knew what I knew now. But again, the way I make up for that is I help up and coming business owners not to make the same mistakes that I made. So I'm saving them money, but I'm also, I'm using my mistakes to help them get better. So, I think I count that as a win.
Yeah.
So, and I'll go as far as say is I had to learn that and lose that money so I could help them. So it's a win-win for
Yeah.
me in that respect.
And now a word from our sponsor. Playbook Athlete is a media and marketing company that provides strategic and innovative brand exposure across both athletic and professional markets. Their goal is to focus their exposure and craft their apparel with personality and feeling to ensure that they capture and display the real you. Your individuality, your struggles, your grind brought to life through cotton and ink to be displayed on the national stage. Everyone has a why, and Playbook Athlete wants to hear about it. So, what are you waiting for? To join the movement, go to playbook.store and purchase yourself some amazing products. That is playbook.store. More excitingly, as a listener of the Ballers Brew podcast, you get 15% off when you use promo code Michael15. That is capital MICHAEL15. Hashtag why I grind. Now, back to the program.
And that's really cool. Like, as you say, and I only asked that. I didn't mean to be rude. I just wanted to ask.
No,
like,
I didn't. I didn't
thinking
think you
back.
were.
Yeah, yeah. But it's cool because, like, as you said, a loss is a lesson. But when you take it in a community perspective, if you're going for something by yourself, you can only go so far. You can only go off of so many losses before you're absolutely depleted and you can't go anymore. But when you're working within a team environment and you have a dynamic of each individual is taking a loss, you're learning together because as a team, you can go so much further in trying to, I wouldn't say replicate success, but you're finding your own trajectory to success, which may be different.
Like that. That's right.
Yeah.
Very good way of putting it. Yep. Using a car analogy, a car works better with four tires.
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
everybody's got a role to play and everybody's got a part to do, and you just empower those to do that. And as a driver, I make sure there's air in the tires.
Yeah.
So I really get it. I like the way you put that.
And now, obviously, we focused on a low point. You said at the start, there's a lot of losses. There's a lot of lessons that need to be learned. And you have to, I don't say you have to find your feet, but you have to try and identify your identity and what you as a brand wanted to become. And you need to understand that, okay, this is our trajectory moving forward and this is how we're going to do it. And as you said, there needs to be a plan. There needs to be a process.
Right.
So over that journey, can you identify a highlight or standout moment that, over this time that you have picked up? Something that really, really stands out to you and you go, wow.
I have a lot of them. And one that comes to mind is, or an example that comes to mind is when parents call Playbook Athlete with tears in their eyes and they say, you got my son into college. You got my son thinking about starting a business. You got my son, he's able to speak and articulate to college coaches. You got my son an offer. It is very, very inspiring. And for me, it's like I said at the beginning of the podcast, if I were focused solely on money, Michael, I would have shut this thing down in 2011 because it didn't happen immediately. But I was focused on the legacy and, of course, my family. And that allowed me to ride through what we're calling the low points to recognize the reason I'm doing this at the high points. And it's very humbling to see, Stetson Bennett, the national champion quarterback last year for Georgia. He came through the Playbook. Trevor Lawrence was there. We got Lindenmeyer. Luke Lindenmeyer just went to Nebraska. There's a lot of kids out there that came through Playbook Athlete, and that is humbling because I was just on my couch one day thinking about how we can make an impact in the world, and I don't know where the name Playbook Athlete came from, but it came up, And because of that thought process, I don't want you to think it's me. Again, I'm very spiritual and how we got there. But there are parents right now that, really, really, really thank Playbook for what we're able to do. And that is always the high. It's never you'll never hear me say, man, we cleared, X amount, X. I ain't worried about the money. I'm worried about what people say about Playbook Athlete. Those are always going to be the high for us. And also it's very humbling because again, I heard you when you were just an idea right here, and now you got that purpose hoodie on, living the purpose and living this podcast. Very humbling and exciting, man.
Yeah, and I found that really cool. And I just want to jump in and say that I think what really made me fall in love with Playbook and what you guys stood for, or the message and the story that you're trying to portray to those that are within your community, is that you're focused on the person. It's about the individual, and it's not just the people outside or that you're trying to draw within the community. It's also those that are running Playbook. It's your team, and it's you're worried about the person, and it's always the person who's at the best interest. How can we become better? What is creating us to be motivated? And then it directly links down, it's like an overflowing cup. It's not really the best analogy, but you're overflowing this joy and this motivation of why that focuses on the purposes into those that are then within your community that are joining. Here I am, motivated to want to grow and become a better person and focus on my why, and really realigning myself as to how can I be a better athlete, how can I be a better student,
Right.
how can I be a better son.
That's right.
Yeah.
Your why will grow someone else's why. So, and you're right. And I get the cup runneth over. If I'm overflowing with it, it'll trickle down to the rest of my team and trickle down and keep going. So if I don't believe it, I don't buy into it, well, Playbook's gone.
Yeah.
But I gotta live it. I gotta eat it, sleep and breathe it. I get it.
And I found that really, really cool and really, really inspiring. And I think something that I'd love to maybe highlight, or if you could elaborate on, is as Playbook athletes, or maybe more focused on yourself, you're constantly dealing with diverse, talented athletes. And how do you help aid them to stay committed and focused on reaching their dreams and desires when they may be in the pits, they may be struggling, or it's the question of where do we go from here? How do we as an athlete make it further? How do we continue to live out our dream?
So the question is not if, the question is when they struggle, when they're down, because it's gonna happen. No one is above any of that. That's gonna happen. What do you do? So you gotta. I always ask them a question: are you happy with where you are right now? If it ended today, and you put a period on your career, your story right now, are you happy with it? And usually the answer is, well, I'm happy as a person, but I wanted to go further. Well, so that then the question is, well, what do you do? What do you do to get yourself to that next level? Because nothing is handed out. There are no freebies. No, Nick Saban is not going to call and say, "Hey, I got an extra scholarship. Do you want it?" Just because no, you got to work for it. So you got to be willing to outwork the best person at that spot. So it's through encouragement we do that. It's through accountability we do that, and we usually pair athletes with the right trainers, and the trainer reinforces those things for the athlete, and it's really focused on self-care. Make sure they get the attention they need, and the team that surrounds them. So it's really multifaceted that we get those athletes back on track.
That is cool. I really, really like that. And it links into my next question in the sense that it's easy, and this is coming from my own athlete perspective, you need a community to help develop a person. The saying, it takes a village to raise a child. However, sometimes words of encouragement might not always be enough. There's a lot more factors that have to come into play into how do I get from point A to point B. And
Right.
I love that, like you say, and it's something that we hold within our own team. It's accountability. We need to hold each other accountable to ensure that we are there every day and we are stepping up. We are ensuring that we are giving it everything that we can during the time that we have, because that's how we ultimately grow. That's how we're going to
Right.
become better. But what tools do you believe that both yourself and Playbook Athlete possess to help empower, uplift, and inspire young, emerging, talented athletes besides what you've mentioned previously?
Examples. If you can show somebody how, then they'll never go without. So like you're right, words can get you so far, but the best motivator is an example. And we show these athletes through living. We show these athletes through our everyday dealings. And I told an athlete one time, man, he had a lower leg injury, and it was hard for him to walk. And I said, that doesn't mean you stop, because right now I'll be your legs. I'll help you. You want to go to the gym? I'll help you. Doesn't mean you stop. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be, oh man, I hate that this happened. But that's a 5 minute place that you stay at. That's driving through down the road and you hit a speed bump. You slow down for the speed bump, and then after you pass the speed bump, you pick up speed again. You keep going. So it's showing nobody cares how much cares how much you know until they know how much you care. We show these guys that you care for them, and girls, show them that you care for them, and they'll do anything for you. And so I really think that's the way to live life, because life, like you said, is a community. You're going to need something from somebody, and somebody's going to need something for you. So it's a handshake, pat on the back type deal, and it's very important for the success of culture that we do that.
I found that really cool. And you mentioned injuries, but something that I've also noted with a lot of athletes that I train with or have trained with and have performed with is that often you also get those moments of plateauing. It's just this development, flatline. And it's discouraging because you're going, but I'm putting in the hours, I'm putting in the work. And often or not, the analogy, you're putting cents in the piggy bank.
Yep.
You just keep putting in the cents, you keep putting in the cents, and you're working towards reaching that eventuality of it's going to crack. And when it cracks, it's going to be exponentially amazing. And it's about investment. You're trying to invest and nurture your talents and your athletes and your individuals. And that relates back to Playbook and how, like, now you're trying to focus on your athletes or those within your community here's an example. It's been done before. You're not alone. You can easily achieve that. And I would like to just throw in a story, and I think it's really cool. Over the past month leading up into our nationals, we had a coach from the ISL, the International Swimming League. He's one of the head coaches on Energy Standard. His name's Sonny from Great Britain, and he was coaching Chad Declos and Max Litchfield, both Olympic swimmers. And often our group here at Marty's, Stellenbosch University, our guys, when we train, you train a certain threshold. You're pushing yourself and you're pushing yourself, and you're really pushing yourself to be better. And it was so refreshing to see these guys now training with us, and they're raising the bar. And it's like when you mentioned the samples, it's when you see these guys next to you that are doing the extraordinary, the things that like you don't normally see. It's like, wow, there's so much more that I can give. When you see someone reaching that much higher than you, you go, but I can do that. If he can do that, why can't I do that? Why can't I do that? Because I can easily break the barrier. I can easily be where they are if I'm putting in the effort, if I'm putting in the load to get there. And something that's always stuck with me, I've rephrased it to no limits, but it comes from Michael Phelps' quote: "The more you dream, the further you can get. So don't put a limit on anything."
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I'm gonna tell you right now, if you don't have that mentality, then you're complacent. It's a complacency to think that I'm at the type of this is as good as I'm gonna get. That's a complacency. And because, like you said, somebody if he's doing it, so can I. And not only can I do it, I can do it better. So I'm chasing him. And that's how you push yourself to greatness. I told a kid the other day, he said his mom called and said he's playing basketball. He said he's the best in his school. And I said, so? And she said, well, what do you mean by that? I said, well, he's the best in the school, but is he the best in the conference? Is he the best in the county? Because you don't want to be the best on the team. Because to me, you've already reached the top. That's it. You got to keep chasing the next, keep climbing. Now, when I explained that to her, it did sound kind of harsh, but when I explained it to her, she said, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. And it's just like what you're just saying. When those other guys came into that pool, you're like, I can do that. And you go after it. And you gotta go after like your life depends on it, and you can achieve it.
Yeah. No, and that's really cool. And I love how everything links into the next thing, in the sense that you are always working, but you're not working alone. You're working with the people next to you. And not only are you working with them, those people are the people that are uplifting you to want to do better. And
Right.
I always like linking it back to the word community. It's a community in a sporting environment. And it's something that we covered in our one class. And I feel like there's a misconception. And I don't know if it's the same with an American sporting culture, where there's a team dynamic. For instance, football. And then there's swimming, which is an individual sport. And often people get the misconception of swimming's lonely, in comparison to football, where you have such a big squad roster. But at the end of the day, although the training may be lonely, training's training. You're working hard. But it's a team
Right.
dynamic, and it's the guys around you that are getting you where you wish to be. You know, you're working
right.
towards a common goal.
That's right. I love going to the gym and seeing not just the football team in there. I like seeing the track athlete. I like seeing the swimmer, and some of those track athletes are bigger, faster, stronger than the football players. So they push each other, even though they're not in the same sport, because they're not chasing a 40 time. They're chasing in the endurance, the strength piece of it. So I love seeing that.
Yeah. So I'm just checking the time now, and I know you gave me 30 minutes, and I feel like we've gone over. So I'm gonna wrap it up with one more question, a bit light-hearted, something I thought that you might enjoy. I'm pretty sure I asked you this last time, but I can't remember. Which is your NFL team that you support?
Carolina Panthers.
The Panthers. Okay, so this question doesn't relate to them. I think I got it wrong. I do apologize. But
That's okay. I watch them all anyway. I love them all.
I just wanted to ask though. So based off of the previous season and the upcoming season starting, I think it's towards the end of the year, but I know the draft is soon. I don't know if this is going to be released before or after the draft. But how do you feel going into the new season off of what we've experienced from last year? What are your predictions going into the year? Do you think Joe Burrow will bring the Cincinnati Bengals back to the playoffs? And seeing as Trevor is a Playbook athlete, do you perhaps have any news on him and the status of the Jacksonville Jaguars?
Great question. So I answer that first. Joe Burrow. That kid's legit. They will probably be back in the playoffs this year. I'll go to my conference, NFC South, which we had. So the Panthers have been struggling for years. I think they're okay with struggling because they don't make good decisions to not struggle, right? They make decisions that keep them struggling. And then so Tom Brady retired at one point, and it looked like we may have a chance.
Yeah.
Okay. Then Tom Brady came back, and all of our chances are gone now because he's going to win the NFC South and probably make it ride through the playoffs. So good for Tom, but not bad for my Panthers. Trevor Lawrence, I don't have any insight on what's going on down there, but they got a new coach, and I know Trevor's happy now with the new coach. They had Urban Meyer before. I don't know if you follow that, and that was just a fiasco. That was a horrible deal, but I will say this: Trevor is improving. That he's working out, and he is getting better. He's already a great quarterback, but he is going to make an impact whenever they can figure out the coaching situation down there. And we're excited for him and a few others that we got running around the NFL that were other Playbook athletes. But we love seeing good things come from our Playbook alumni.
Yeah. No, that's really, really cool. And with that, I would like to call a wrap on the show. Curtis, I'd like to just thank you so much for availing yourself for this conversation and allowing me to go over the time that we had allocated. I feel it's so enriching to have these conversations, where we can just share information and grow off of each other. And I really appreciate that I can represent Playbook, and that you're able to come to Ballers Brew. I do hope that you love it. I hope you love it. So yeah,
Love it.
For those of you that are listening, for those of you that are out there, For those of you that made it all the way to the end of this episode, because I know a lot of people sometimes jump off, I'd just like to thank you. I'd like to thank you for your time. And I do wish to promise you that there's so much more insightful content coming your way. And I promise it will be enriching and worth your time. So please click, listen, like, and subscribe. That is all from me today. I am your host, Michael Bromfield, and that is it for Ballers Brew.